CBS Sports HQ on All Hallows Eve. I'm Chris Hassel. We are kicking off Week 9 in the NFL tonight. Ravens, Dolphins, South Florida, both coming off wins after really slow starts to the season. And Lamar Jackson coming back for Baltimore. It'll be his first action in a month since he hurt his hamstring in a blowout loss to Kansas City. The Ravens went 1-2 without him. And despite sitting at 2-5, they're still favored to win the AFC North, a couple games behind the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're 7.5-point favorites tonight against the Dolphins. 67% of the money, 2/3 of the money wagered so far on the Ravens to cover that 7.5. Let's get into the game, the matchups with Douzable, who joins us ahead of Lamar's return, and he's returning home. He grew up about 20 miles away from Hard Rock Stadium. Do you think he's going to look like the Lamar of old, or will there be potential rust, potential hamstring issues moving forward?
Now, Haas, I don't know if he'll be as electric, but you talked about it. There's nothing like coming home. This is a homecoming for Lamar. And when you look at the history in him versus the Dolphins, two of his games where he had a perfect passer rating, where he had 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, were against the Dolphins. So he loves that home cooking. And we saw last week, right, with Tyler Huntley, when they got adequate quarterback play, and Tyler Huntley also uses mobility, gaining over 50 yards rushing, it really opens up the offense. So say Lamar has his 80 or 90%. I don't see him having those explosive runs that we're accustomed to seeing him do, but I could see him using a little bit of his mobility just because it opened up the Ravens offense so much with Tyler Huntley last week, and that's was something they were surely missing. But I do see Lamar coming out and trying to put a show on in a homecoming, coming back home to Florida.
Lige, earlier in the week, we showed you 5 reasons why the Ravens are the favorites in the AFC North, despite that 2-5 record. 5 reasons why they'll come back to win the AFC North. When you look at these 5 reasons put together by our research team, what stands out the most?
I would say number 2 and number 5. We'll start with the cupcake schedule, right? In the NFL, you got to respect everybody, but you look at the schedule, right? They have the Dolphins this week. They have the Vikings, at Browns, the Jets, then the Bengals. Like, those are all winnable games. And when you look at the Ravens, they have so many divisional games to play right now. So they already 1-0 in the division. They still have to play the Bengals twice. I believe they have the Browns one more time. You see it there. And they have the Steelers twice at the end, the team they're trying to chase down and catch in this division. And then the defense, right? That was the big question mark for this team, because going into the season, I thought this would be a top 5 defense. Well, even before the injuries, they weren't playing up to the standards, right? They struggled. Look at it right there. Weeks 1 through 5, last in points per game, 31st in yards per game. There's only 32 teams in the NFL and 31st in the red zone. But look at the turnaround the last 3 weeks. Now, you got to put an asterisk in there because one of those weeks were a bye. But versus the Rams and what they did last week, this defense has played significantly better because guys have gotten back healthy. Roquan Smith is back in the lineup. Marlon Humphrey back in the lineup. And they're playing significantly better. And then look at the odds. Look at Vegas. Even when they had a losing record, and they still have one now, they're the favorites to win this division, I think, because of those 2 reasons, right? The schedule that is coming up, they had probably the hardest schedule out the gate, and the schedule opens up for them down the stretch, but also significantly, the defense has played significantly better the last couple weeks.
On the other side, though, the Dolphins are feeling better. After a 1-6 start, they go and just completely blow away the Falcons in Atlanta, and Tua had his best game in a long, long time, through 4 touchdown passes. What can they do, and Tua specifically, to build off that performance?
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing, right, Ash? Because the week before the sky was falling when they played the Browns, Tua had 3 interceptions in that game. People were wondering, were they going to be sellers at the trade deadmark? Well, it's all about how you handle adversity, and I love how they responded in Atlanta. Now, again, it must be something about those Falcons, right? Because they got blown out by the Carolina Panthers and they got blown out by the Miami Dolphins. So if you want to get right, play the Atlanta Falcons. But the thing with Tua is he played in within time, and they got Devon Achane going in the game. I believe Tua only had 5 incompletions in this game. The offensive line played significantly better. They're going to have to be monumental against this Ravens D, who is starting to play with some confidence. Yes, they have some guys that were banged up, but guys are coming back, right? John Jenkins in the middle of that defense for the Ravens. He's been a stalwart against the run. They're going to have to able to move him off the ball and run the ball with Devon Achane. And if you're Tua Tagovailoa, do not hold the ball. get it out of your hands. Now, Zach Orr, the defensive coordinator for the Ravens, he knows that. He's going to try to make Tua go through his second progression, hold the ball, and that's when Tua makes mistakes. But the thing that not plagued them, but the thing that why they had so much success last week is because Tua played in timing and got the ball out of his hands.
Well, if the Miami offense was able to do that to Atlanta, I wonder what Drake May and that just simmering Patriots offense is going to do. We'll preview that game a little bit later with Charles Davis. But sticking with this game tonight, the Dolphins obviously not expected to make a run to the playoffs.
Yeah.
They have a coach on a hot seat, though. Ravens are still expected to win their division. So which team is under more pressure to win tonight?
It's the Ravens, without a doubt. Now, going into the season, people figured Miami would maybe muddle around being a 500 team because there was so much changes in the offseason, getting rid of a lot of their defensive veterans. So you felt like there was going to be an acclimation period with this team. When you look at the Ravens, a lot of people, including myself, has picked them to go to the Super Bowl and not only go, finally get over the hump and win it. We talked about how the schedule lightens up. But if you're the Ravens, you got to start stringing wins together so you can catch the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers have a significantly harder schedule, but it doesn't matter, Has, if you do not start accumulating wins. So if you're the Ravens, to me, they have more pressure to get it done, right? Winning last week versus Chicago without Lamar Jackson was big for the confidence of this team. Let's see if they can go on that run now to catch the Pittsburgh Steelers and win the division. Again, looking at their schedule one more time, they beat the Bears last week. They have the Dolphins on this short week. Then they play the Vikings, who probably going to have J.J. McCarthy under center, a rookie quarterback in the Browns. The Jets did come off a big win last week, but they've struggled for majority of the season. And the Bengals just lost a game to the Jets. So the schedule really opens up for the Ravens, but they got to start stringing wins together. To me, they're under more pressure than the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, and the question was which team is under more pressure tonight, and that makes sense. Baltimore is still expected to get to the postseason. The Dolphins are not. But when you look at the head coaches, it's clear which side the pressure is on there. What does Mike McDaniel have to do? What are his chances of potentially saving his job in Miami?
I mean, he's got to do more of what he did versus the Atlanta Falcons, surprise some teams, right? They have to continue to play their type of brand of football, which is a timing-based offense. And when they do that, they are one of the more efficient offenses in football. Yes, they don't have Tyreek Hill there, but Jalen Waddle is still there. Devon Achane, one of the most explosive backs in all of football. A thing that wasn't talked about enough, their offensive line actually played really well. That has kind of been their Achilles heel on offense. The offensive line has really struggled. They played well versus the Atlanta Falcons, and the defense flew around. They inserted Willie Gay in on defense. He played a lot more, actually led them in tackles. I've been wondering, why they haven't done that for the entire year, because even going back to training camp, he was that energy bug on the defense. So if you're Mike McDaniel, right, you show everybody what we did last week. Hey, guys, when we're executing at a high level, we can compete with everybody, and that's what he needs to continue to do to make sure he can maintain his job beyond this year.
Lige, we showed you that 2/3 of all the money is on the Ravens to cover the 7.5 in Miami. What side are you on?
I can't go against Lamar Jackson coming home. Come on, Has. This is a homecoming for this guy. I talked about it earlier, right? He has 2 perfect passer ratings versus the Miami Dolphins, where he had 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. I can speak from experience. There was nothing like when I, traveled and went to Tampa Bay to play in front of my friends, family, and even guys that I grew up with. Like, that's when you want to put on a show. Now, you have to find that balance, right, in regards to when the whistle blows and the ball's kicked off, it's just football, but you're more excited for that game. You want to put on a show for your hometown team. So you're going to put on a show if you're Lamar Jackson. Give me the 7.5 with the Ravens, and I think the trajectory arrow is going up. I think the Ravens go on a run after tonight.
All right, Lige Douzable trying to save his Super Bowl pick, the Baltimore Ravens, and get him to 3-5 here. Cover that 7.5. That kicks off Week 9 in the NFL as you look at the primetime games and some notable Sunday games on CBS. Colts, 3.5-point favorites at the Steelers. They're trying to get to 8-1. And then one of, if not the biggest game of the year in the NFL, the Chiefs at the Bills. NFL Today will be there ahead of that 4:25 Eastern Time kick on CBS.